Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along to the 2023 Scotwest Credit Union AGM. There are going to be a number of votes during the course of this evening, and I will take people through those as we come. But in order that we can familiarise yourself with the system, and so that we can also record who is here attending the meeting and ascertain the quorum, can I ask everyone who's joined to go to the vote button and mark yourself as attending the meeting, and we'll just give a couple of minutes for that to happen. At the moment we have 12 people down as attending. We require to get that up to 15 in order to have a quorum. So if everyone can just do that who's just joined. And if anybody has literally just joined and isn't sure what I'm talking about, if you can go to the vote button and mark yourself as being in attendance for the meeting. That would be really helpful. Hopefully there's another couple of people to join us soon. Give it another couple of minutes. I'm not sure because I don't see the waiting room who's coming in, so I'm just hoping that everybody who's coming on is going to be here. Now we've got to 14, that's got to be good news. One more and then we can make a proper start. 15, yes, we have made it. So thank you very much, and I hope that was fairly straightforward for the voting system. As I said, I will take people through at every stage tonight when we have to do votes to make sure that you all know what you're voting for and what you need to do. So if I could just say a welcome again to everybody. We do now have a quorum for the meeting, so we can proceed. I'm sure there may be one or two other people join us as we go on. I think everyone will have had the agenda, but just to kind of run through briefly while others join us, we are going to take the minutes of the previous meeting. We will then take the Chair's report and the Chief Executive's report, and Francis and I will give our reports together, and then we will take questions on the Chair's and CEO's report after that. We'll then move on to the election of directors, and as I said, I'll explain the voting process at that time. We'll then have the financial statement and auditor's report and questions arising from that, the appointment of auditors, and then we have some rulebook changes to do this evening as well. So that's really the process for the meeting. So if we could move to the minutes of the previous annual general meeting, that was Monday the 5th of December last year. We require that to be proposed and seconded, and there will be a process here if people can vote to move or second the minutes. Anybody who was at that last meeting, that would be helpful. I think we've got, yeah, we have a proposer and a seconder for that, so thank you very much. Are there any matters arising from the previous minutes? I should have said at the outset, if anybody wishes to ask a question, there is an ask button. You'll see that alongside. There's a chat, vote and ask button, so those can be used during the course of the meeting. So if anybody did have any questions on the last AGM minutes that are not covered on the agenda, wouldn't be covered on the agenda, there's an opportunity at the moment to ask that. And if there's nothing coming up there, which there doesn't seem to be, then I will move on to take the Chair's report. I know you will have had the opportunity to read it, but I just wanted to kind of go through a few of the kind of highlights. As I said, Francis and I are both going to be giving our reports on screen, and then if you do want to ask a question, if you think of something while I'm speaking or Francis is speaking, please do pop your question in using the ask button, and we'll pick those up at the end, and you will have that opportunity. It's important that people get the opportunity to ask any questions that they would like to. I wanted just to do a bit of a review of the year, and just to draw your attention really to the way that the report for the AGM has been set out this time round. We've added some numbers at the beginning of the report just to kind of highlight briefly, as I said, in those numbers, some of the kind of key facts and figures around the credit union for last year. So 2,500 new members, and now a total of almost 36,000 members in the credit union, which is very good progress that we've made. We've also included information about the lottery, and just to remind people that the Scotwest Lottery AGM takes place immediately after this, so anybody who participates in that can stay on after this AGM. We've also given some information on the community awards. Of course, this year we have tried to prioritise groups and organisations who have got some kind of element of sustainability or protection of the environment alongside the kind of general social good that those organisations do, and there's been some information there. And again, I would suggest that if anybody's ever got ideas or wants to make nominations for those, that's of course a really important thing that members can do. I think in broad terms, it's been a pretty challenging environment again this year for the credit union. Last year we had, as people will recall, it was a fairly volatile financial climate at that stage, and I think we've seen some of that continue this year. And the board of directors have worked really hard constantly to try and match up the interests of members of the credit union, keeping that at the forefront while managing the business effectively in that difficult environment. And of course, after many years of seeing low interest rates, zero interest rates, and at some stages the potential for almost negative interest rates, we have seen interest rates making rapid rises, which has had an impact on the cost of living for many people. Those higher interest rates being offered, by other banks and financial institutions have also meant that we've had to rethink something of our approach to how we look after our members in this climate. High interest rates elsewhere obviously being a risk that people could move their savings from the credit union, and that's made us rethink to the point where we are intending, and we're poised now to do this, to introduce a fixed term option, a fixed term savings account, where members who perhaps want to save for a bit longer term would be able to deposit their savings and get a rate which is comparable with other high street financial institutions. And that's a change from what we've done previously. I did mention also in relation to the community awards that we have been trying to adopt an approach which really tries to look after our environment, a more green approach. And of course we've done that, tried to do that at least during everything that we've done with the credit union, taking account of again the needs of members, but also trying to take account of the needs of the wider environment and looking to be more sustainable. So we've had things like the green car loan for electric vehicles and hybrids, which has been extremely popular. You would also note in the report, and this is a really exciting opportunity for us as a credit union. We're already obviously one of the largest credit unions, but we are moving ahead with two mergers with Perth and Kinross Credit Union and Stirling Credit Union, which I think really sets out a future strategy for what we want to do to continue to grow and to continue to be able to offer more people our services and ensure that we're able to best represent our members. So we really look forward to that next chapter, and I'm sure Francis will refer to some of the challenges and also the kind of exciting opportunities that are there for us as we do that. There is a section in the report from myself in relation to governance, and of course all the members of the Credit Union Board are volunteers, and I would have to say that I've had fantastic support in the last year from the board. Every director has made a contribution. Everyone really does have the kind of values and principles of the credit union at heart, and also continue to highlight ways that we can represent the views of our members and listen to members and take things forward in terms of products and so on that basis. I'd like to say a particular thanks to Jackie King, who has stepped down from the board. She made a huge contribution, particularly in terms of a continuous focus on fairness and equality, and how we kept the sort of cost of living crisis and the impact of that on our lower members, our lower paid members or lower income members, to the forefront of whatever we were doing. Alex Eby is also stepping down after 8 years of service, and Alex has brought a huge amount of his professional expertise and commitment to the work of the board during that time, and we would wish Alex and Jackie all the best for whatever they do. I know they'll continue to take a close interest in what we do as members of the credit union. We will shortly this evening be doing elections for 4 director posts to come on. Some will be re-elections and some will be new members, and it's been really good to see people coming through the Scotwest Training Academy. And I think, again, I would just want to remind people of that opportunity. If anybody is interested in becoming a director of the credit union, then that is there. Nobody is expected to know everything at the outset. It's a really good opportunity to find out more about the credit union and to take those first steps, perhaps, to putting yourself forward for election as a director at some point in the future. Again, you know, that's a really crucial part of our whole ethos as a credit union, that it is run by the members for the members, and it's important that we get people continuing to come through and refresh those positions. I do need to draw your attention to the document which was part of the pack, which relates to the regulatory disclosures. We are, of course, regulated by both the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority, and we're required to report to you that we're compliant in various aspects of deposit protection, insurance and additional activities. Those additional activities include the fact that we have been offering mortgages as part of the work that we do. So I would just again draw your attention to that so that we can have that minuted, that's been reported. As I said at the outset, it's been a busy year for us. We've had to set up some different ways of working, different structures coming out of the pandemic. Things have settled down and we have a kind of hybrid system for the staff working, and we've done the same for board meetings where a lot of the work is done online. But that doesn't lessen the amount of work that's there for people. And I would, again, as I said, put on record my thanks to both my fellow directors and the staff of Scotwest Credit Union for everything that they've done as we try to keep things running smoothly in what has been at times challenging times, but also quite exciting times as we look to the next chapter of the credit union as we grow. So I'm going to hand over to Francis, who is going to look at a wee bit more into the future and what's coming next for Scotwest. Over to you, Francis.
Right, thanks, Cathy. I'm not going to try not to repeat everything that you've talked about. I think you've covered everything. But as you said, another difficult year for the credit union to navigate through. It seems now that that's the norm for us. But I'm really proud of the team in Scotwest, the resilience and the adaptability that they've shown this year. It's not been easy. It's been extremely busy and challenging, but everyone is focused and at meeting the needs of our members. And I think it's, you know, which is always important, but our membership is ever grown now. And that with that, it becomes more challenging to meet the needs of everybody. And one thing to look at is the change in, Cathy, you touched on the high interest rate environment, high inflation. And what that's brought with it is a whole change to the way that we look at the services and the products that we need to offer our members to meet what you need and what you would expect to get from a financial services partner. Our demand for lending over the last year has been phenomenal. our lending book has grown by over £11 million, and that is a record for us. The flip side of that is the savings have diminished a little bit. So £5 million our savings book has dropped by as people start to rely on those savings that they built up perhaps through the pandemic when people saved a little bit more money. People have to dip into their savings. But we also recognise that people are now able to get a return from their savings. And as Cathy mentioned, early next year we'll be launching our interest-bearing accounts, not only the fixed term account we've talked about, we're also developing an interest-bearing account for our regular savers and our payroll savers through our employer partners. In terms of growth, our employer partners have grown more this year than any other year as employers start to look at how they can support their employees. And it's very well recognised that payroll savings really helps people to develop that savings habit. And we now have over, I think it's 130 payroll partners that we work with, and we cover a huge part of Scotland. So there is plenty of scope for more members to come and benefit from the credit union services. Moving forward into next year, one of the main things from the internal perspective is working on the mergers with Perth and Kinross and Stirling. We're all really excited to move forward with this, and it's about growing the Scotwest family, to put it that way, and bringing those services further afield in those areas that Stirling and Perth and Kinross, that their common bond covers. And we're really looking to partner with the people in those credit unions and bring those services to a wider population in Scotland. Another exciting part of the merger is that we are bringing the staff over from those two credit unions. They're going to become part of the Scotwest team. We have around 8 members of staff coming to join us, and that's quite an exciting prospect for us as well, and that brings more resource to look after our members. We're looking to complete the mergers in the first quarter of next year, but obviously there's a lot of work around integrating all the processes into the Scotwest way, and the team are going to be working hard to deliver that at the start of next year. But on a wider context from the sector, there are many mergers at the moment happening in the sector. A lot of credit unions looking to the future and looking to become part of a bigger credit union in order to build that resilience. So interesting times ahead, I think, for the sector, and Scotwest is at the forefront of a lot of the innovation and conversations around the continuing resilience of the sector, working with our stakeholders in the sector, the trade bodies, and a lot of partners who want to see the credit union sector grow. Aside from the mergers, we also have plans to look at and to deliver more kind of digital services to make things easier for people, but we are also committed to not losing people who don't access digital services. We're looking to make sure that we don't leave anyone excluded from our services. So we continue to work on those developments in the background to support our members. The last thing I'll probably say is, in my report, if you've had a chance to read my report, I've talked about looking to the future in terms of our purpose, our way, and our impact. And we have spent some time gathering our thoughts around Scotwest and looking to meet the needs of our current members and the needs of our members moving forward. So Cathy talked a lot about resilience and sustainability. And as we move further forward, we're looking to develop our products and services and support to our members that gives our members the opportunity to make choices that are good for them, but also good for the planet. So I'm excited to move forward into that next year and develop more of those ideas that we've worked on internally. So with that, I'll pass back to yourself, Cathy, and we can go on with the rest of the meeting.
Thanks very much, Francis. I think that was a good insight. Again, into some of the exciting opportunities that are coming forward. And I think one of the things that we're really keen to do is we can't stand still. No organisation can ever stand still, no matter how good your products and your services and everything is. We've always got to look to the future and be trying to work towards what members are going to need and want. And I think the mergers in particular are going to be really exciting. It is going to be some work to do, but that's what it's all about. It's really important that we get on with that, and we've got quite a tight time scale, but I've got every confidence that the staff team are up for it and are ready to take that forward. I was just going to check, do we have any questions? I don't think we have had any questions asked of that. There is an opportunity still if anybody at this stage wants to ask anything. Now's the time to do it. No. Okay, well, thanks. I hope that means that we have explained things reasonably thoroughly. As always, we are hopefully reasonably accessible. So if there's anything else comes up that people think about later, please don't hesitate to come back to us. So thank you for that. The next part of the agenda is the election of directors. As I said, we have had a number of directors who have move on. Obviously, we have kind of fixed terms. So there are 4 people standing for election. On this occasion, John Begg, who has previously served on the board and is seeking a further term, Samantha Fisher Hamill, who would be a new director who's come through the Directors Academy, Maurice Gilligan, who joined us recently earlier this year as a co-optee, is now standing for election, and Stuart Wallace, who's also come through the Directors Academy process. So what I'll do is take each one of those in turn. They are in alphabetical order, as you can see. So again, on the first vote, it would be voting to reappoint John Begg to the board. So people can go to the vote button. You'll see that you've got the opportunity to vote for, against, or abstain. So if you could cast your votes now, please. Okay, is that the voting? I think that's the voting completed. And 19 votes. I'm just looking at that. There's 19 have come in. Is there anybody else still to vote? Please do so now. If not, I can say that there is a majority vote for John to be reappointed. So thank you for that. The next one is to vote for the proposed director, Samantha Fisher Hamill. Again, if you could just go to your voting buttons, you'll see the same system operating. Just give it a minute or two for all the votes to come in. Okay, that looks like the same number of votes that was cast earlier. So I'm taking it that is everyone who has now voted. And again, that is a majority in favour of Samantha joining the board. So welcome to Samantha. The next one is the vote for Maurice Gilligan. And again, if people could just use the voting buttons. think that's looks like by the numbers the voting is now complete, and thank you for that. And Maurice is elected to the board. And last but not least, we'll take the vote for Stuart Wallace. Again, just ask people to use the buttons. Okay, I think again the voting appears to be complete there, and Stuart also has been elected to the board. So welcome back to those who've been on the board before, and welcome to our new directors. I look forward to getting the opportunity to work with you, and we will be meeting up very soon to get the next phase of the work with the board underway. Thanks very much for that. The next item on the agenda is the financial statement and auditor's report. Now, the auditor's report is obviously really important because that gives someone with an external eye cast over to make sure that we are indeed doing everything that we said we were doing, and that it is all in order. So I'm going to invite David McBain from Johnson Carmichael to come on screen and to give a bit of background to that, and also to explain his findings.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So nice to get the chance to meet people today. This is my first year leading the audit at Johnson Carmichael. I think it's our fourth year in total since we were appointed as auditors, and I just want to run through the key points from our work this particular year. Our obligations, as you may be aware, as auditor, is essentially to perform an independent view on the financial statements. So naturally, we work very closely with Frances and the board, going through the findings of the audit and our conclusions. And I'm very pleased to say that having done that, we did conclude, as you will see in the financial statements, that in our view, the financial statements do show a true and fair view of the credit union's affairs. Essentially, that's the balance sheet at September 2023 and its surplus for the year in question. We're satisfied that they've been prepared in accordance with UK generally accepted accounting practice, which for those of you, any of you who are accountants, the standard that's used is called FRS 102. And we also have to form an opinion on whether the accounts have been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies Act 2014. And again, we concluded that they were in accordance with that particular act. There are some additional reporting responsibilities that we have. So we do report on going concern specifically. So we have to review the going concern assessment that is provided by management and form an independent view on that. And you will see in our report that we have not identified any material uncertainties around going concern, anything that would suggest there's a significant doubt about the ability of the credit union to continue in operational existence for a period of at least 12 months from the point at which the accounts are approved. And that's a fairly important step, because everything else that we do in the accounts is essentially historically looking, but going concern is forward looking as well. So hopefully that is useful for those of you looking at the viability of the credit union for that period. The other thing that we have to do as well is look at the risk of fraud in the credit union. So although the management of the credit union are ultimately responsible for preventing and detecting fraud, we do have to design our work with a reasonable assurance that we will identify a material fraud if there is such a fraud in place. So we do go into a report into a little bit of detail about how we've assessed the risk of fraud and how we've tackled that in our work. But again, I can confirm, for the avoidance of doubt, that we didn't identify anything of concern in relation to fraud. So those were the main points that I wanted to just highlight for those of you who may or may not have already seen the accounts. I am obviously happy if there are questions for anyone to put those through the questions facility, and I'll certainly either answer those just now if they're available, or later on as well if any come through before the meeting closes. But hopefully that just provides a short summary of the work that we've done and the conclusions that we've come to. Kathy, you're on mute, I think.
There we go. That's us. I was trying to be so polite and stay on mute while you were speaking, David.
Thank you.
This is the opportunity now for members to ask any questions about the accounts, the financial statements, or anything from the auditor's report. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. No questions. Okay, thanks very much, David. I'm sure you feel you've got off extremely lightly with no questions there, but again,
yeah,
you've
made
the offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The offer's there if any questions come through before the end of the meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good. There's just one, and thanks very much for that. There's just one thing I wanted just to flag up. This is really not for now, but it's more for a kind of future situation. Is there is a huge amount of work. It's a very short time scale between the end of our financial year in the credit union and the AGM, and there's a huge amount of work both for the staff team and the auditors and pulling all that together, and every year they have done it. What is also one of the busiest times of the year for the credit union in terms of Christmas and so on coming up. So one of the things that Francis and I have talked about is the potential at some point in the future of looking to move the AGM to make a sort of give a bit more time to make sure that all that happens properly without people feeling that they are either too rushed to do it, and also to make sure that members have got the time to digest the information before AGM. So I'm just flagging that up just now. It's not for a decision. It would obviously have to come back to the members at a point in the future, but just to mention that. Okay, if there's no questions on that, we can then move on to the appointment of auditors. Apologies, we have to propose and second the financial statements as the next vote. So again, if I could just ask for members just to vote on that. Can we have a proposer and a seconder? If we can have a couple of people to do that, that would be helpful. I think we've got that. Okay, thank you very much. And that takes me on to the appointment of Johnson Carmichael as the auditors, which again we require to vote on. So if people could do that, that would be helpful. I'll just give a couple of minutes for people just to use that vote. Okay, I think that looks like the votes are in, and pleased to say that that vote has been carried. So Johnson Carmichael continue to be our auditors. Thank you very much. Thank you. That takes us to the rule book, and I just want to briefly explain the changes, just a kind of summary of the changes that are in the rule book. Basically, there are kind of 5 key areas that we're asking people just to approve. The first is the expansion of the common bond area to incorporate what is the Falkirk and Clackmannanshire local authority areas. And that's in anticipation of the transfer of engagements, the merger with Stirling Credit Union. That allows us to do that. The second point is amendments to the named employers in line with the credit union's marketing strategy to allow more individuals to save and borrow from Scotwest through the payroll. Again, Frances alluded to that in her report. Third is the inclusion of a new statutory object for the credit unions to allow us at some point in the future to provide insurance products for our members. This is something we've talked about before, but we need to make changes to the rulebook to allow us to do that in future. The fourth point is addition of the ratification of transfers of engagement from credit unions out with the existing common bond to matters reserved for the membership. Again, relating to the work that we're doing on the mergers. And number 5, last but not least, the amendment to the constitution of our nominations committee, removing, this is a technical thing, removing the specific job title of the compliance function at Scotwest who will attend the nominations committee. There will be someone from the senior staff attending, but it just removes what was a very specific job title. Again, I would ask if anyone's got any queries or anything about those amendments, now would be the time to do so before we move to a vote. Again, I'm not seeing anything coming in on the questions. So can we move to the vote for the approval of amendments to the rulebook? Again, it's a simple for, against, or abstain. And that has been approved. So thank you very much. That takes us to the end of the formal business of the AGM. I always just like to ask, just in case there is anything that any member has not had the opportunity to raise as yet. This is the kind of final opportunity to ask a question or to make any points. If there isn't anything there, then I would thank you all for your attendance. Thank you all for your continued membership and support of the credit union. And thanks to, as I said, to the staff team and everybody who's helped make the AGM happen so efficiently. And I'd wish you all the best for the festive season, Christmas and the New Year, and look forward to seeing you all at some point again in the future. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, anybody who's involved with the lottery and wishes to remain on, just stay on for the lottery AGM, which takes place immediately after this. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for waiting around for this year's Scotwest Lottery AGM. Before we get started with the agenda, I'd just like to ask, similar if you were in time for the Credit Union AGM, if you could just go onto the voting section and click that you're attending this meeting. Give it another few seconds. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of last year's meeting. The papers have been up on the website, the Scotwest website, for a week or two now, and they're also available for download here if you wanted to do that. What I would ask is if anyone who attended last year's meeting is able to both propose the minutes of last year's meeting, and also if someone could second them in the vote. Thank you. Okay, that's great. We've got a proposal and a second. That's fantastic. The next item on the agenda is the financial statements. Thankfully, a lot simpler than the credit union financial statements, so there's no need for anyone from the auditor to be here for this. I'll just follow up that, as you can see by the report, the auditors have concluded that these statements are true in fair view of the lottery up to 30th September 2023, and that the lottery continues to be a going concern with no issues. It's fairly straightforward, the accounts. I would ask, before we move on, if there's anyone who has any questions about the accounts. I'll just give that a few seconds to look for any questions coming in. Nope, that seems to be okay. That's great. What I would ask is if these financial accounts can also be both proposed and seconded as a vote. If you could go ahead and do that. That's great. Thank you very much, everyone. The next item on the agenda is the report of the promoter, which is myself. This year we've seen a slowing in the increase of our tickets for the Scotwest Lottery. This year's growth was about 1.7% from the start of the financial year to the end of the financial year. That's down from about 3.5% in the year before. Given everything that's happening else around the credit union and wider, this would appear to be part of a widespread effect of the ongoing cost of living crisis, with members choosing to cut back on certain things. Because of the slowdown in the growth of ticket sales, there's no need at this time to restructure our prize funds, which we often do at the AGM. I think we've done it at the last 2 AGMs, but there's no need to do that this year. But I would say that despite there being a decrease in the growth of ticket sales, the lottery is still able to support a very successful year of the community awards that Cathy was talking about earlier on in the meeting, with around £10,000 of lottery funds being granted to causes through our common bond. Does anyone have any questions on this before we move on to the next item on the agenda? I'll just give that a few seconds. No question, that's great. I'm moving on to the next item in the agenda. It's the election of our officer, the treasurer for the Scotwest Lottery. For the past year, Scott Craig has held this position on an interim basis, and this year we're putting forward a vote for Scott to take over this role permanently. So I would ask you to go onto your the vote button and vote on Scott being taking up the role of treasurer on a permanent basis. Okay, that's great. I can see that Scott has been successfully voted in as the position of treasurer to the Scotwest Lottery. Congratulations, Scott. Thanks for that. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, it's the election of the auditor. As always, the lottery follows Scottish Credit Union's lead on this. So I would ask you now to vote on the approval and appointment of Johnson Carmichael as the auditors for the lottery for the coming year. That vote should be coming up shortly. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And that has gone through as well. So Johnson Carmichaels will continue to be the auditor for the Scotwest Lottery this year. Before we bring this very short AGM to a close, can I ask just briefly again, to follow Cathy's lead, if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask about the lottery, I can try and answer here or get an answer for you at a later date. I'll just give that a few seconds and then I'll let everyone go and enjoy their evening. No questions have come through. That's great. So that brings a close to this annual general meeting for the Scotwest Lottery. Thank you everyone for attending and have a nice evening. Bye bye.